I don't want to put my girlfriend on the deed for the house I'm buying, am I wrong? I started looking for houses to buy in the last few weeks with the help of my parents, who just sold my childhood home and moved into a smaller one. They will help add a very generous amount to the down payment. I currently live with my girlfriend, 20 years, and have been for 3.5 years. We have lived together for more than 2 years, and she will also be moving into the house. In her excitement about this, my girlfriend mentioned it to her parents. Her parents have insisted that she should be on the deed for this house. When my girlfriend first mentioned it after talking to them, she used the phrase, "she needs a safety net." This surprised me because it made me feel like it was a plan for a breakup. My father is not accepting it at all. He says the money is an advance on my inheritance, and although he likes her, he does not want to split it 50-50 with my girlfriend. He believes it is not her parents' business, and that it is only between me, him, and my mother. I think I will marry my girlfriend, but we have had some ongoing issues that I want to see resolved or addressed before taking that step. Most of them are money related, which is the leading cause of divorce, even more than infidelity. Things like Amazon spending, being irresponsible with a credit card, and not keeping a job. We have been in this apartment together for 30 months, and she has worked for about 8 of those months. When she worked, she contributed to the bills. This was so exciting when we started looking, and there was never a single question about her ownership of the house. In my eyes, it was always our home. Now I feel so anxious, and as if I don't want to move forward with this. Am I a jerk for wanting to keep only my name on the deed for this house? Since that conversation with her parents, our dynamic has subtly changed. Although my girlfriend does not say it openly, I can sense a certain tension when we talk about the subject. She insists that it's not that she doesn't trust our relationship, but that she wants to feel secure in case something goes wrong. To me, that is a concerning sign. It makes me wonder if she sees this as a long-term commitment or just another stage in her life. I have tried to approach the conversation calmly and rationally, explaining that the investment comes from my parents and that therefore it is fair for the property to remain in my name. She argues that even though the purchase is largely financed by my family, we will both live in that house and build it together. She says that, over time, she could also contribute and that she doesn't want to feel like a tenant in her own home. This has led me to think about what owning this house really means to me. I have always seen it as our home, but in an emotional sense, not a legal one. It's not that I want to exclude her in any way, but I have real concerns about our financial stability and what could happen if the relationship doesn't work out. I have read stories of people who end up in painful legal disputes over shared properties, and that is the last thing I want. In the past few nights, I have struggled to sleep. I feel like this is a crucial test for our relationship. If we can't agree on something as important as this, how will we handle bigger problems in the future? On the other hand, if I insist too much on my stance, will she think that I don't trust her or our relationship? Last night, while we were having dinner together, she brought up the topic again. This time, her tone was different, firmer, but also more concerned. She said she didn't want this to become a point of tension between us, but that she also couldn't ignore how she felt. She mentioned that we could look for some form of compromise, such as an agreement that would grant her certain rights without the need for her name to be on the deed. That made me consider alternatives. Maybe we could draft a private contract establishing how we would handle the property in different scenarios. Or perhaps I could speak with a lawyer to explore legal options that would allow us to find a middle ground. However, the mere fact of having to think about this makes me doubt whether we are truly ready to take this big step together. As we continue exploring houses and looking at different options, I feel like the pressure keeps building. I don't want this to become a shadow over what should be a happy moment. But I also don't want to make a decision based on external pressure or out of fear of losing the relationship. I need to find a solution that makes both of us feel secure without compromising my own principles or creating resentment in the future. With each new house visit, my girlfriend's excitement seems to diminish a little. She no longer makes as many comments about the decoration or how we would organize the spaces. I don't know if it's because she is processing the situation or if she is starting to rethink the future of our relationship. I also find myself at a point of uncertainty. I don't know if I should take a step back from the house search until we resolve this issue, or if I should simply move forward and hope things fall into place. What I do know is that this conversation is far from over, and in some way, the decision I make could define the course of my relationship and my future. Since the conversation about the house deed, my relationship with my girlfriend has become more tense. There are no direct arguments, but I feel a subtle distance that wasn't there before. The nights when we used to talk about our dreams and plans have been replaced by prolonged silences and superficial conversations. I can't help but wonder if she is also reconsidering what our relationship means. The house visits continue, but the initial excitement is gone. We no longer talk enthusiastically about the possibilities of each property, and instead, there is a heaviness in the air every time we step into a new room. I try to focus on the practical aspects of the purchase, the structural details, the potential of each place, but it's impossible to ignore that something between us has changed. One night, while we're having dinner, I decide to address the issue head-on. I don't want to remain in this uncertainty, so I ask her directly what she thinks about the situation. She stays silent for a few seconds before sighing and saying she doesn't know. She says she understands my reasons, but also feels that her position is fair. She wants to make sure she is making the right decision for her future, and although she doesn't say it outright, I feel like there's something more behind her words. That conversation marks a turning point. In the following days, I notice she is more distant, as if she is evaluating something in her mind. I also start to reflect on everything from a different perspective. It's not just about the house, it's about what the house represents. A commitment, an investment, a test of our relationship. And if we are having so much trouble agreeing on this, what does that mean for our future? Things get even more complicated when her parents call me to talk about the issue. I'm surprised that they reach out directly, and while I try to stay calm, I can't help but feel cornered. They tell me that they understand my perspective, but that I should also consider what this means for their daughter. They talk about security, stability, and how marriage is not always a guarantee that everything will work out. At that moment, I realize that it's not just my girlfriend who has doubts. Her family is also concerned about our future. I don't want this to turn into a bigger conflict, but I also don't want to give in to external pressure. I explain to her parents that my intention has never been to leave her unprotected, but that the initial investment comes from my family and that it is as much a financial decision as an emotional one. They don't seem entirely satisfied with my response, but at least the conversation ends without a direct confrontation. As the days go by, my mind keeps turning the situation over. I start to wonder if I should look for a middle ground solution, something that makes both of us feel secure. I speak to a lawyer about possible options, but they all seem complicated or unsatisfactory. A legal agreement could protect my interests, but it could also make her feel excluded. And if I decide to include her in the deed, what guarantee do I have that there won't be problems in the future? The situation continues to weigh on our relationship, and I notice that she is also struggling with her own thoughts. One day, I find her sitting on the couch, staring at her phone screen. When I ask her what's wrong, she tells me she has been considering something she hadn't mentioned before, the possibility that we don't move in together. Her suggestion takes me by surprise. She says that given the circumstances, maybe it would be best if I bought the house alone, and she stayed in our current apartment until things became clearer. She doesn't directly say that she is considering a future without me, but the implication is there. I sit in silence, processing her words. I don't know if this is a temporary solution or the beginning of the end. The idea of moving into a house alone, one that I had imagined sharing with her, feels strange, but it also makes me think about the reasons behind all of this. Maybe, deep down, we both know that this issue isn't just about a deed. Maybe it's a sign of something bigger, something we haven't wanted to face directly. Over the next few days, the tension between us is palpable. There are no arguments, but there's also no longer the same comfort as before. I start to notice things that I used to overlook, how she avoids certain topics, how her responses have become shorter. I also find myself doubting things we once took for granted. One night, I sit in the living room with a notebook and start making a list of the pros and cons of the situation. I try to see it from a rational perspective, but everything boils down to a single question. Are we really ready for this step? And if we're not, what does that mean for our future together? Her parents' words echo in my mind. My own father's concerns as well. The look on my girlfriend's face when she mentioned she might stay in the apartment. It's all there, pushing me to confront a truth that maybe I don't want to accept. And then, on a sleepless night, with the house on my mind and uncertainty weighing on my chest, I realize that there's a conversation we have been avoiding for too long, and that no matter how difficult it is, it's time to have it. The tension between us has become unbearable. There are no shouting matches or heated arguments, but the silence between us weighs more than any confrontation. Every interaction is loaded with something unsaid, with a latent unease that neither of us dares to fully address. Since my girlfriend mentioned the possibility of not moving in with me, I have been struggling with uncertainty. Her suggestion wasn't a definitive statement, just a possibility. However, the mere idea that she is contemplating a future apart has ignited a flame of doubt in my mind. I find myself questioning not only the house purchase, but also the direction our relationship is heading. I want to believe that this is just an obstacle, a test of our strength as a couple, but the fear that it might be a sign of something deeper and more problematic won't leave me alone. To avoid falling into an endless loop of thoughts, I decide to talk to a close friend. We meet at a quiet cafe on a Sunday afternoon, and after some trivial conversation, I finally tell him what has been going on. He listens attentively and nods before responding. What you're describing isn't just a problem with the house. It's a fundamental difference in how you both see your future together. I'm not saying it's impossible to resolve, but if she feels the need for a safety net, it means she's not completely sure you'll always be there. Those words hit me hard, not because I hadn't thought of it before, but because hearing it from someone else makes it feel much more real. Days pass, and I try to return to my routine. We keep looking at houses, but the conversations have become mechanical. I no longer envision the future in those spaces with the same clarity. My mind remains stuck on what this means for us. One night, while we're watching TV, I decide to bring up the topic again. I've been thinking about what you said about not moving in with me, I say, trying to sound calm. She looks away from the screen and watches me cautiously. It's not that I don't want to, it's just that. She sighs, searching for the right words. I don't want to make a mistake I'll regret later. Her response surprises me. It's not just the house that worries her, but what it represents. A mistake? I repeat, trying to process it. You have financial security. I don't. If something goes wrong, you'd have your house, your stability, your safety net. I don't want to depend entirely on you, but I also don't want to be left with nothing if things don't work out. Her honesty leaves me speechless for a moment. I understand her point, but it also hurts that she can't fully trust in us. I'm not planning for something to go wrong, I say, feeling a knot in my stomach. Neither am I, she responds quickly, but life is uncertain. Her answer is as logical as it is devastating. It's not about a lack of love, but about a different perception of security and stability. I decide to give her space and think about what this means. I realize there is no easy solution. It's not just about putting her name on the deed or not, it's about addressing the lack of security she feels in our relationship and in her own life. In the following days, I start researching possible solutions. I consider legal agreements, co-ownership options, and other mechanisms that might give her some kind of guarantee without compromising my financial security. However, every alternative seems to have a downside. One day, I decide to talk to my parents about the situation. I feel nervous because I know they see this from a financial rather than an emotional perspective. As expected, my father is skeptical, and my mother, while understanding, also expresses concern. You have to think long-term, my father says. If there are doubts about commitment now, what will stop more from coming up later? Those words stick in my mind. not because I want to doubt my relationship, but because it's a valid question. Weeks go by, and the situation doesn't improve. My girlfriend and I remain at a standstill, avoiding direct discussions about the issue, but feeling its weight in every conversation. Finally, one night, she tells me she's been thinking a lot about everything. "I don't want this to destroy us," she says quietly. "Neither do I reply. "Maybe we should take some time to think, not about the house, but about us." Those words freeze me. "Are you saying we should break up?" I ask, fearing the answer. "I don't know," she admits. "I just feel like we're pushing something forward without knowing if we're really ready." Her honesty hurts, but I also understand it. I realize we've been so focused on the house that we've neglected the most important thing, our relationship. I don't respond immediately. It takes me a long moment to process it. And as she looks at me with uncertainty, I realize that no matter what we decide, our future is about to change in a way neither of us expected. My girlfriend's words echo in my head for days. Maybe we should take some time to think, not about the house, but about us. I haven't been able to forget them. They have kept me awake, going over every conversation, every moment when something changed between us, and I failed to see it in time. The apartment feels colder. We haven't talked much since that night. It's not a fight, but it's not the same coexistence as before. We move like two people sharing the same space, but who have somehow become strangers. To clear my mind, I immerse myself even more in the house search. I force myself to look at each property objectively, trying to set emotions aside, but it's impossible. Every room I imagine decorated with our things reminds me that maybe those images are no longer realistic. My mother has noticed my lack of enthusiasm and asks me directly what's going on. I tell her the essentials without going into too much detail. Her expression softens, as if she had seen this coming for a while. "You can't build a home on uncertainty," she says calmly. "If there are doubts now, maybe it's because there's something deeper that you need to face." I can't help but feel frustrated. I don't want all of this to mean the end of my relationship, but I also know there are things we can't ignore. One night, after yet another long silence between us, I decide to ask my girlfriend what she truly feels. "I don't want to remain in this limbo. Are you sure you still want to be with me?" My voice is firm, but not harsh. I want the truth, not an answer out of obligation. She takes a moment to respond. She hugs her knees on the couch and sighs before speaking. "I love you, but I don't know if we're in the same place," she admits. "I don't want to lose you, but I also feel like there's something about all of this that makes me hesitate, and that scares me." Her honesty hits me like a punch to the stomach. Part of me wanted to hear something different, but I also know it's better to face this truth now than to live with false illusions. Days go by and our routine continues, but there's something inevitable in the air, as if we're both waiting for an outcome that neither of us wants to trigger. In an attempt to clear my mind, I go back to looking at houses. This time, alone. A part of me feels that if I make this decision on my own, it could be the sign I need. I come across a house that seems perfect in many ways. Spacious, well lit, with a garden that could have been ideal for the shared dreams we once had. As I walk through the rooms, I realize I'm not imagining her laughter echoing through the walls. I don't see her in the kitchen making breakfast. I don't picture her in our bedroom, holding me as we wake up. It's the first time I realize that maybe I'm already starting to visualize a future where she isn't there. When I return to the apartment, she's in the living room, staring at her phone with a serious expression. When she sees me, she straightens her posture and sets the phone aside. There's something in her eyes that tells me she's been reflecting just as much as I have. "Can I ask you something?" she says in a low voice. I nod, unsure of what to expect. "If it weren't for the house, if we didn't have to make this decision right now, would you still be with me?" The question takes my breath away, not because I don't have an answer, but because I had never framed it that way before. I take a moment before speaking. "I don't know," I finally say, a lump forming in my throat. I think that's the worst part. It shouldn't be such a hard question to answer. She nods and lowers her gaze. Neither of us says anything for a long while. That night, I barely sleep. Not because we had another argument or because there was any dramatic outburst, but because the weight of our words lingers in my mind. I wonder if what we're doing is avoiding the inevitable, clinging to something that may no longer be the same. The next day, I receive a message from the real estate agent. The house I had seen is still available, and she wants to know if I want to make an offer. My first instinct is to reply immediately, but something stops me. I can't make this decision without facing the reality of what it means. And maybe, before committing to a house, I have to figure out if I can still commit to us. When I look at my girlfriend that night, I see that she has been thinking the same thing. We don't need to say it out loud. We both know we're at a breaking point, and whatever we decide in the coming days could define the rest of our lives. The days pass with the same tension suspended in the air. There hasn't been a big fight, we haven't made a final decision, but everything points to something about to break. Every conversation is measured, every gesture feels carefully calculated. It's as if we're both afraid to be the first to admit it. The real estate agent calls me again, asking if I want to move forward with the offer on the house I saw. I ask for a few more days to think about it. This isn't a decision I want to make lightly, especially not in this state of uncertainty with my relationship. On a Saturday morning, I decide to go out for a walk alone. I need to clear my mind, to get away from the apartment that now feels more like a cage than a home. I walk aimlessly until I find myself in a park we used to visit together when things were simpler. I sit on a bench and let the memories flow. I think about the happy moments, the nights of laughter, the shared dreams. I think about what brought us here. I can't help but wonder if what we're going through is a test of our relationship or the beginning of an inevitable end. When I return, I find my girlfriend in the living room with her suitcase open on the couch. My heart stops for a second before she speaks. "I'm not leaving," she says quickly, as if she knows what I was thinking. "I just need a little space. I'm going to stay with my parents for a few days." I don't stop her. I don't ask if this means something more. I just nod slowly and help her close the suitcase. It's a silent, almost mechanical process, as if we both know there isn't much more to say at this moment. When she leaves, the apartment feels empty in a way I've never felt before. I stand in the living room, trying to process what just happened. That night, I barely sleep. I get up several times, walk around the house, check my phone for a message from her that never comes. Finally, I sit at the table with a notebook and start writing. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to solve, but I need to get my thoughts out somehow. I write about the house, about the conversation with her parents, about the growing tension between us. I write about my fears, about the uncertainty, and finally, I write about love. Is love enough to sustain a relationship when there are so many doubts in the air? Can we overcome this, or are we just prolonging the inevitable? The following days feel strange. We talk little through messages. She tells me she's okay, but doesn't go into detail. I don't push her. We're both using this time to think, to understand what we really want. One day, while working from home, I receive an unexpected call. It's her mother. I don't know what she expects from this conversation, but her tone is serious. She asks how I'm doing, how things have been since my girlfriend left for a few days. I don't try to hide the truth. I tell her that I miss her, but that I also understand she needed space. "She misses you too," her mother says after a moment of silence. But I think she's afraid of what this means. Her comment leaves me thinking. Afraid of what exactly? Of staying together and it not working out? Of breaking up and regretting it? That night, I decide to send her a message. Nothing long, nothing dramatic, just a simple question. "When you're ready, can we talk?" She replies a few hours later. "Yes, soon." I don't know what soon means, but it's enough for me to sleep a little better that night. Meanwhile, the real estate agent is still waiting for my decision on the house. I have to decide whether to move forward with the purchase or let it go. The problem is, it's not just about a house. It's about what it represents. And until I have a clear answer about my relationship, I don't know if I can make that decision. The only thing I know is that whatever happens in our next conversation could change everything. The days pass slowly. Every morning, I wake up expecting a message from her, a call, a sign that she's ready to talk. But it never comes. And in that silence, I start to understand what I've been denying for weeks. On a Friday night, just as I'm about to fall asleep, my phone vibrates. It's her. "Can we meet tomorrow? I need to talk to you." I take a deep breath before responding. "Of course. What time? Lunch? At our usual cafe. I'll be there." The next day, I arrive early. I sit at the table we used to occupy and wait. Within a few minutes, she appears, her hair tied back and a serious expression on her face. When she sits down, we remain silent for a moment. Finally, she's the one who speaks first. "Thanks for coming. Always." She lowers her gaze, as if searching for the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about us these past few days," she says, playing with her coffee cup. "And I realize that a part of me has been waiting for you to give me a guarantee that no one can give me, that everything will be okay, that we'll never fail. But the truth is, I'm still scared." I nod slowly. "I understand. I've been thinking too. And I think the reason we haven't been able to agree on the house is because, deep down, we're not sure about the future." She presses her lips together as if those words hurt, but she also knows they're true. "I love you," she says, her voice barely audible, but I don't know if that's enough. The silence that follows is heavy, and at that moment, I understand. What we've been avoiding, what neither of us wanted to say out loud, has been in front of us all along. "I love you too," I say softly, "but I know we can't keep going like this. It's not fair to either of us." She nods, her eyes shining with held-back tears. "Maybe in another time, another place, this would have been different. Maybe," I say with a sad smile, "but this is our present, and I think it's time to accept it." We sit in silence for a while, letting reality settle in. Finally, she exhales deeply and wipes away a stray tear. "What are you going to do about the house?" she asks, her voice firm but curious. I take a moment before answering. "I'm going to buy it, but not as our home, as my home. I need to start over." She nods, understanding what that means. I think that's the right decision. We finish our coffee in silence, savoring the last moments of something that is coming to an end. When we stand up, there's no drama, no final words filled with empty promises. Just a long embrace, full of gratitude for what we had, but also resignation for what we've decided. As I watch her walk away, I feel sadness, but also a strange sense of peace. For the first time in weeks, there are no doubts, no uncertainty, just the certainty that this, as difficult as it is the best thing for both of us. The next day, I call the real estate agent and tell her I want to close the deal. This will be my house, my new beginning. And even though it hurts, I also know it's the first step towards something better.